Hi, I'm Mike Beliveau, and today I want to run down for you my favorite top 10 TV Westerns. And I'm just going to be clear, these are my favorites. They're not based on any objective criteria. I didn't go to Metacritic and get the top ones or anything. I mean, these are the ones that I personally think are the top 10. And it was difficult. As I made up this list, I'd put together a top 10, and then I'd think of another show I really liked, and I'd think, oh, that's got to be on the list. But if that goes on the list, what's got to come off? And you agonize about that. So if I did this list a month from now, it might be a little bit different. I don't know. That probably would be. Now, I don't necessarily think you're going to agree with this because these are my favorite 10 TV Westerns. And, your favorites are your favorites and they might be different. And by all means, tell me what yours are and, put them in the comments and we can discuss it because, I'll probably think, wow, you're right. I should have put that one in. But what would I take out? So anyhow, I'm going to give you the list in a minute, but I just want to give you a couple of caveats. Here's what you're not going to see on the list. You are not going to see modern Westerns like, let's say, Yellowstone, being the most current example of a modern Western. And it's not that I don't like them. I loved Yellowstone. It was a great show. But I don't consider that, a classic Western. I mean, it's in the West, but that's a modern show. I mean, it's kind of like The Sopranos in Montana, right? So, that might make my top 10 list of all-time TV shows. I don't know. I haven't tried to put that list together. But it's not going to make my top 10 list of Westerns. The other thing you won't see is made-for-TV movies, like Last Stand at Sabre River or Crossfire Trail, just to name a couple. But what will be considered are TV miniseries, because I consider that to be a series. So things like Lonesome Dove or, Broken Trail, those would be considered. Okay? Now, just my rules. You can disagree with them. I don't care. That's fine. But, I felt I had to establish some criteria. So here's the other thing where I'm already breaking my rules. Number 10 is actually two series. It's a tie, and I couldn't drop either one of them. So you can call it 10 or 11, but I'm just going to say tied for 10. So I'll just start off. They're both Taylor Sheridan shows. And the first one is Lawman Bass Reeves, which I thought was a great show. Now, that starred somebody whose name I will not be able to pronounce. I can guarantee it. It's David Oyelowo. I'm going to call him David O from here on out. And he portrayed a historical character, Deputy Marshal Bass Reeves, who was phenomenal and really should have more stuff done on him. In fact, most of the books about him are kind of juvenile. I'd love to see a really good biography. I've read a couple of biographies of him, and as I say, they're aimed for young adults. And this show does him justice. It's got an excellent cast, had a great story, extremely well acted. Clothes are great, weapons are good. It's got Dennis Quaid as a guest star, and I love Dennis Quaid. And he plays Deputy Marshal Cheryl Lynn. And for goodness sakes, he has a LeMat as his gun. Okay, so kind of interesting, right? So that's tied for 10. Also tied for 10, the other Taylor Sheridan show, 1923. Now, a lot of you are going to say, well, why didn't 1883 make this list? And the reason is because I found 1883 to be very severely flawed in terms of its premise. And, I enjoyed it. If you suspend disbelief, you can enjoy it. But the idea that the Duttons would emigrate to Montana by way of, like, Corpus Christi, Texas, by wagon train in the year 1883 is a stretch. and that they would have a group of Eastern Europeans wagon training along with them is also kind of beyond belief. And the reason why is quite simple. By 1883, the railroads were getting almost as far as they needed to go. So they would not have wagon trained up there. And you can say, oh, well, maybe train tickets were too expensive with all their stuff and blah, 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 blah. And it would have been. But remember, buying a Conestoga wagon and 4 horses and all the supplies that you need to make a 4-month journey up the plains to Montana, with all the difficulties that implies, that's way more expensive ultimately than buying the train ticket. And by 1883, it just wasn't happening. So there's a problem. And everything else that stems from that initial decision is kind of flawed. Right now, I enjoyed it because I can suspend my disbelief, but it irked me. 1923, I find to be a more realistic show. Now, I'm not going to say it's totally believable, but it is, I think, it holds together better. And it has a great cast. It's got Harrison Ford and Helen Mirren as the stars, 2 legitimate movie stars that have phenomenal charisma and tremendous talent. And all the supporting players are fantastic. In fact, Timothy Dalton, 007, is one of the villains. I mean, top notch, really. The action's great. Cinematography, the scenery, everything. It's very well done. So those 2 are tied at number 10 for me. Now, number 9 on my list is really changing things up because it's the Western comedy F Troop. And this basically piggybacked on the success of McHale's Navy. And in a way, also on the much earlier Phil Silvers show. But it's hilarious. I mean, and it starred veteran Western actor Forrest Tucker and Larry Storch as the 2 larcenous non-coms who are really running a criminal empire behind the scenes. Ken Berry plays the clueless commanding officer. And Melody Patterson played Captain Palmer, Ken Berry's girlfriend, Wrangler Jane. And here's kind of an interesting fact that I've got to tell you. Melanie Patterson was only 15 years old when she was hired for that role and only 16 when she was on screen. She had lied about her age, saying that she was 18 when she was 15 to get the job. Ken Berry is romancing a 16-year-old girl in this show, which is just kind of interesting. But the show is just excellent. It's tremendously funny. It was very popular with the viewers. But despite that, it was canceled after only 2 seasons. Warner Brothers canceled the show because they thought that Warner Brothers was just monopolizing too much of what's called the Warner Ranch, which is where they filmed most of their Westerns, that they had to dedicate too much of that to F Troop because you have the Indian Village, you have the fort, you have the town, you had a lot of stuff going on. And they thought they could make better use of that in other shows and that they wouldn't miss F Troop. And that was probably a bad decision because even with only 2 seasons of the can, F Troop was in reruns for decades, and it has remained consistently popular. And it's just a hilarious show. And in fact, if you see it today, it still holds up. It's a great show. So that's my number 9. Number 8 on my list is a more modern show, Hell on Wheels. This show is a fictionalized account of building the Transcontinental Railroad in the immediate aftermath of the Civil War. The series starred Anson Mount as former Confederate Cavalry Colonel Cullen Bohannon, who comes to the railroad seeking revenge on the Yankee soldiers who raped and murdered his wife during the war. But the show becomes so much more than that. It just expands to cover everything that was going on in that era, from immigration to shady business dealings of building the railroad, to the expansion of the West, Native Americans, religion. It just covers all the bases, and it does it very well in most cases. It's a very well-written show, very well acted. It ran for 5 years on the AMC cable network, and AMC never gave it its due because they had two other properties, The Walking Dead and Breaking Bad, that were more popular, though Hell on Wheels was quite popular. But that they felt that's where they wanted to put all their promotional effort. So Hell on Wheels suffered from being poorly promoted by AMC. And yet it still did very well and ran for 5 seasons and is a great show. And it still does well today. Now, number 7 on my list is The Rifleman, starring Chuck Connors. He portrays Lucas McCain. And I've got to say, him and his son in the show, Johnny Crawford, who plays Mark McCain, they both do an excellent job. There's good chemistry between them. Chuck Connor is a shockingly good actor. And I'll tell you, man, he can do a slow burn or a quick anger. He's a guy you believe. When he gets mad on screen, you think he's mad. And at 6'6", you don't want that guy mad at you. But he did an excellent job. The stories were very well written. They had great guest stars. All in all, it's just an excellent series. I have not done a Guns of on this yet. I probably will, but this is one of the good ones. Now, number 6 goes to Steve McQueen playing Josh Randall as the bounty hunter on Wanted, Dead or Alive. This is another half-hour black and white show from the 50s. Once again, excellent writing. Of course, it's well known for its gimmick gun, the mare's leg. But one thing you can see, and this is, I think, something that separates Hollywood stars from the rest of us. And I've not met many Hollywood stars in my life. But I have met a few big ones. And one thing that I will say is that they all have a powerful natural charisma, the ones that make it to the top. Now, some of them can turn it on and off. They might be jerks in real life, and I know one who could be quite a jerk. I won't say who he is, but Steve McQueen's got charisma that comes through that small screen. He just does fantastic. The show only ran for 3 years because he wanted out and CBS wanted him out for various reasons, and he went on to become a big movie star. But the show is excellent. Now, number 5 on my list is another show that only ran for a few seasons. It's Bat Masterson and starred Gene Barry. And as a kid, I always loved this show, and it still holds up today. Gene Barry was just a classy guy, and he played Bat Masterson as basically almost like an East Coast sophisticate, which is wrong, but not entirely wrong. I mean, the historic Bat Masterson was well-dressed, well-spoken, self-educated, but very smart, and one of the bravest, most deadly men you would ever meet. And Gene Barry does a very good job of communicating that presence. And it's well filmed. The episodes are well written. they purport to be from the life of Bat Masterson. I'm here to tell you, some of them actually touch on his life, but they touch very gently. But the show is quite good. So that's my number 5. Number 4 is High Chaparel. And as a kid, this show grabbed me from the first episode. And one of the reasons is it was very cinematic. They really spent some money filming, particularly in the first season. They had Indian battles that were huge. There were tons of, this is a ranch that actually had tons of ranch hands working on it who you saw, right? If you went to Bonanza, obviously there's 1,000 square mile spread, and the only hired hand you ever saw generally was Hop Sing, the cook. On High Chaparral, you'll see lots of the ranch hands. And you'll see them all out there defending the ranch against Apache attacks and things like that. It's quite good. And it had very gritty, believable characters who you liked as the main characters. So this show really kind of transported me as a kid to the old Southwest. And I loved it. And I have recently rewatched it. And it still holds up today. It is a great show. So that's number 4. Number 3, and I'll tell you, once we're in 1, 2, 3, it's hard for me to shuffle these around. But number 3 on my list is Have Gun Will Travel. Now, I was a little young for this when it was first on TV. I saw it, but I was a little young to fully understand it. I got the travel across the West, righting wrongs, boom, shoot the bad guy. I got all that stuff. But Have Gun Will Travel operates on a lot of levels. And it is truly an adult Western. And sometimes very adult, but they don't hit you in the face with it. But I'll tell you what, this is one, Richard Boone stars in it as Paladin, who is basically a gun for hire, West Point graduate, Civil War veteran. Now he's Have Gun Will Travel across the West. And I find Richard Boone to be tremendously charismatic. I love him in this. I loved him in Hombre, The Tall T, where he plays villains. The guy just jumps off the screen in so many ways. And he played this role just right. And it had great writers. It was a half-hour show, and as I've said in other venues, these half-hour shows are amazing. These days it takes 12 one-hour episodes to tell one story on a lot of TV shows, which is great. I love those. These guys had to get a complete story told in 25 minutes. So there was no wasted action, no wasted dialogue. And they did it. And the shows were great. You didn't feel like you were being cheated. You felt like you saw a good show in half an hour. And Have Gun Will Travel was one of the best. All right, so number 2 on my list, and this might be controversial, it's HBO's series Deadwood. Specifically for me, the first 4 episodes where Keith Carradine played Wild Bill Hickok. Now, I enjoyed the whole series. I thought it got a little long in the tooth at the end, I thought. But I enjoyed the whole series. It was well done. I know it was quite profane. But those 4 episodes, I thought Keith Carradine nailed Wild Bill at that point in his life. It was just excellent. And I think they killed him off way too soon. They should have gone the whole first season and killed him in the last episode. Because Keith Carradine was the best thing on that show. And because of him, I rate this number 2. And I have watched those first 4 episodes, I could not tell you how many times. I just absolutely really love them. So that takes us to my number 1 pick. Drum roll, please, right? What's it going to be? And that is the miniseries Lonesome Dove. Now, I read the book before I saw the series, so I knew what to expect. And lots of times when I do that, I'm disappointed. But I was not disappointed in Lonesome Dove, the series. It was spectacular. Tommy Lee Jones and Robert Duvall, Robert Ulrich, Danny Glover. They're all just excellent. Everybody who played in that. Angelica Houston, fantastic. Diane Lane, excellent. Ricky Schroeder. I never would have thought I would enjoy saying Ricky Schroeder in anything. He was great. So this is just, it does not get any better than Lonesome Dove in my book. It's super quotable. You can just watch clips of it and love it. Very gritty, very realistic, and just all around a fantastic show to watch. I can't tell you, I've read the book 3 or 4 times, and I've seen the miniseries at least that many times as well. This is going to be number 1 on my list always. I might shuffle 2 and 3 or 4, but there's nothing I'm ever going to put at number 1 above Lonesome Dove. So, okay, those were my top 10 TV Westerns. Let me know what you think. I'm ready for the incoming. So, thumb it up, subscribe if you haven't subscribed, share it with your friends, and by all means, tell me what your favorites are, because I absolutely love discussing this stuff with other fans of the Western genre. All right, so till next time, bye.